So I wanted to make a special mention of a fight that I think has flown a little bit under the radar, so much so that I just kind of found out about it barely myself. It's going to be taking place on the undercard of Miguel Cotto versus Saddam Ali. Of course, Cotto's swan song is farewell. I'm not sure if this fight is going to be televised or possibly streamed on YouTube. It's a Golden Boy card, and I'd imagine, considering the fact that Golden Boy has streamed quite a few of their recent undercards the last couple of years on YouTube, that there's a good chance that this fight will be featured. But it's going to be for the interim WBO light flyweight championship. It's going to be taking place between Angel Acosta, 16-1 with 16 knockouts, and Juan Alejo, who's 24-4-1 with 14 knockouts. Some of you guys that have been following me, watching my channel and everything, may remember the fact that Acosta recently fought against Kosei Tanaka. He challenged Tanaka for the WBO light flyweight title. And so you might be wondering, like, well, wait a minute, Kosei Tanaka is the WBO champion. Why is this fight for the interim title? And I think a lot of that is simply because of the fact that due to the injuries that Kosei wound up suffering in his last fight against Rangsan Kayanam, aka Palampol CP Freshmart, he had both of his orbital bones broken, both eyes. So he's going to be on the shelf for a little while, it appears. Originally Tanaka was supposed to be fighting against Ryoichi Taguchi on New Year's to unify the WBO and the WBA titles. But that's been put on the shelf, and Tanaka's been put on the shelf. As he heals up from his injuries and everything. Hopefully he recovers okay. But in light of that, as well as the fact that Tanaka in the past has made it known that he wants to win titles at multiple weight classes. So even then, his days at 108 may be numbered, so to speak, as well. The WBO, it appears, decided to hold this for the interim belt just in case there's any issue with Tanaka campaigning at 108 pounds going forward to be able to defend his belt. And actually, I do like this fight. This is a good fight. Costa actually fought really well against Tanaka, especially in the early rounds. It was a good fight. He faded a little bit later. Acosta isn't used to going rounds. Tanaka isn't necessarily himself, but he was able to kind of I think keep pace a bit better than Acosta did. Acosta appeared to kind of tire out a little bit later, and ultimately I think that cost him in spite of the fact that he was able to hang pretty well technically and physically with Tanaka. All you gotta do is just look at that knockout ratio, the fact that he's knocked out every opponent that he's defeated so far, to see that physically speaking he could probably hang with just about anybody out there at 108. But here against Juan Alejo, a pretty interesting opponent. Alejo himself has actually challenged for the WBO light flyweight title before. A couple years back, he fought against Dani Nietes, the former champion, now the current IBF flyweight champion. Put up a pretty scrappy performance against Nietes. Ultimately, Nietes was just too sharp for him. Was able to pretty much sharpshoot him all the way up until the end. The scores were, I think, a bit lopsided for Nietes. I actually thought Alejo, should have gotten at least a couple of rounds here and there. He put on a scrappy performance, landed some pretty good work to the body, which actually may come in handy against Acosta. Acosta may have some potential gas tank issues. Maybe it might be a psychological thing, or it might just be the fact that the when he fought against Tanaka, that was the first time going that far into a fight. Going the distance like that. He'd been used to pretty much bombing everybody out in the first couple of rounds. But Alejo put up a scrappy performance against Nietes. Nietes ultimately was able to land just the sharper, kind of more eye-catching shots, and I think ultimately that's what led to his victory, regardless of if it was deservingly lopsided or not. But Alejo's a good fighter. Outside of that loss, the other three losses that he has on his record were the first three fights of his career. So, he's one of these guys that, he pretty much got thrown into the deep end from the jump. His first fight was against 4-0 Jesus Limones, and then he wound up rematching that same fighter, Jesus Limones, when Limones was 8-0-1 in his third fight. So he fought the same guy twice within his first three fights. And his second fight was against 15-2-1 Jose Cabrera. So he definitely got thrown in the deep end from the word go. As soon as he got his boxing license, basically they said, like, all right, we're gonna throw you in there against whoever, whenever, however. A lot of times that can be not the greatest move. All you got to do is even look at some all-time greats, to see a couple of guys take L's early on in their career, Hopkins, Marquez, etc. But since then he's racked up a number of victories. I mean, the only other loss, as I mentioned, to Dani Nietes. Recently had a split decision draw though against a relatively inexperienced opponent. I guess it looks like opponent that was kind of thrown in the deep end, similar to the way he was. Guy that only had 6 fights under his belt at the time. 18-year-old dude named Luis Javier Cerrito. I'm gonna be sure to keep my eye on that fighter because that's pretty interesting. I mean, for him to have been able to hang with a guy that's a fringe contender so early in his career and only at 18 years old, I think that might be a fighter to keep an eye on for good potential in the future. But as for Alejo versus Acosta, I think this is a really intriguing fight. Good matchup. Two guys that are kind of fringe top 10, top 15-ish type fighters. I think relatively evenly matched. I mean, Acosta's only loss, of course, to one of the most explosive fighters at the lower weight classes in Kosei Tanaka, and then Alejo's only recent loss, at the very least, to one of probably the most dominant fighter at 108 pounds in the post Chocolatito and Kazuto Ioka era. And maybe not even Ioka so much, but Chocolatito for sure, simply because of the fact that Ioka didn't spend very much time at 108. I mean, Gonzalez didn't necessarily either, but I think Ioka's brevity there was a little bit more pronounced due to the fact that I think he could have done a little bit more there before he had chosen to move up to 112. Gonzalez, I think ultimately, he was always gonna be not long for the weight division as long as he was having issues getting the fights with the likes of Nietes and Ioka, incidentally. But Acosta versus Alejo, I like this fight. Acosta is going to be very dangerous in the early rounds, especially. Big puncher, a guy that really truly believes in his power. Even against Tanaka, he was still, swinging really hard late in that fight, trying to score that kind of come from behind knockout. Has a lot of early knockouts in his record. Alejo, very good body puncher. He takes a punch extremely well though too. I think his defense is a bit open, and that might spell danger for him against Acosta. I'm pretty sure Acosta is actually promoted by Miguel Cotto's promotional group, so I think that's a big part of the reason why this fight is incidentally happening on Cotto's undercard. For his last fight, Cotto's kind of making the transition into his post boxing career as a boxer, as an athlete, as a fighter, as a prize fighter himself. He's been promoting guys for a couple of years now, and not unlike Manny Pacquiao's done recently. I think that he'll probably be able to rally up some pretty good talent out there. Acosta may be one of those guys. So yeah, I favor Acosta in this fight, but I do give Alejo a good chance, especially as the rounds toll on. I think Alejo's chances will get better. He's not like a supremely heavy-handed guy, but he's kind of a consistent worker, consistent work rate guy, a guy with very good stamina, good punch resistance, just somebody that I think is generally going to be difficult for most fighters to be able to fight, unless you're just a supremely good boxer, technically speaking, or unless you have like that lights out power that Acosta seems to have, where you can kind of take him out before he gets into a rhythm, into like the motions of the action, and be able to start wearing you down. But I think this will be probably a fight of either two or three stanzas, basically, with regards to exactly how it plays out, and depending on the length of it, it'll probably dictate as to who the winner, or who happens to have the advantage at any given time, any given round. But like I said before, I favor Acosta. I just think he's of a slightly higher caliber, slightly higher level than Alejo. I think Alejo will have probably learned, especially from the Nietes fight, along with all the other fights that he's had, in a pretty long, tough career that he's had. He's the more experienced of the two, which may count for something as well. But Acosta, he's one of the more explosive power punchers that one could potentially see at 105 to 112 basically. So he's a dangerous fighter, and especially coming off of the loss to Tanaka, he may actually have improved confidence in his ability to go rounds, and he may carry that power a little bit better and be able to clip Alejo, who tends to be a little bit more aggressive and thus open for his shots, as opposed to Tanaka, who tends to move with his feet a little bit more, and he definitely moved with his feet quite a bit against Acosta. I think because of the fact that he was a lot more mindful of Acosta's power than he was of, say, his last opponent, Kairan Palampo, who fractured his orbital bones. And I think a lot of him getting his face broken basically was due to the fact that he really didn't respect Palampo's power, and he wound up kind of paying for it. He definitely wound up paying for it, in spite of the fact that he was able to stop Palampo. But I like this fight. Hopefully Tanaka is able to make a pretty speedy recovery, and I mean, who knows? Maybe Acosta will have learned from the win, or excuse me, from the loss to Tanaka, and win here, and then we'll get an Acosta versus Tanaka rematch, which I think may even be better with some extra experience under Acosta's belt. Or otherwise, if Alejo manages to defeat Acosta, and we could compare performances to how Tanaka did it, and we may have another player in terms of name value at 108 pounds, which is just a jam-packed division. Really, really great fighters. The top 10 of 108, the top 8. Like, to me, I've mentioned it a few different times. Like, if they were to have a World Boxing Super Series, 108 pounds would be an excellent weight to have it at, just because of the fact that you have a lot of really skilled guys that are relatively evenly matched. Between all the champions, as well as some of the champions' recent challengers. Former champion Heki Butler, former champions Pedro Guevara and Ganagan Lopez, Carlos Canizales, who's top contender, probably one of the best non-champion fighters in the sport. And guys like Acosta and Alejo here, who one of them will be crowned the interim WBO light flyweight champion before it's all said and done, unless there's a draw or no contest. Hopefully, nothing like that happens, but there isn't too much to be worried about, I don't think, in either of their history with regard to things of that nature. So let's check it out. Hopefully, it'll be a good fight. Hopefully, it will be broadcast on Golden Boy Boxing's YouTube channel, as a lot of their undercards recently have. I definitely think that this is one of the most deserving fights to have that attention. Definitely, for sure. So that's going to do it for this one, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.